is Will Severin from Crazy Swedes, and you're listening to the Brutally Delicious podcast. Chris asked an unauthorized question, and she'll be punished upside the head and neck area.
1, 2, 3, 4. The Brutally Delicious podcast. The Brutally Delicious podcast. The Brutally Delicious podcast. The Brutally Delicious podcast.
Hello.
Bruce?
Good. How are you?
Good.
You don't sound Swedish at
I
all.
am not.
Where are you from?
This is like every interview that I've done, basically, it's like we always start with this question. So are you guys Swedish? What's going on? The name actually came from a line in John Carpenter's The Thing from 81, where Kurt Russell's character McCready says, you really want to save those crazy Swedes? Even though the Norwegian, he says crazy Swedes. So we just thought it was hilarious. So that just stuck, and that was the name we took for the band.
Cool.
Where are you guys located?
This may be the first time.
We're in upstate New York.
Okay.
Around Saratoga Springs.
I'm originally from Long Island, so.
This may be the first time.
Oh, nice. Yep.
This may be the first time I stepped on the question that should not be asked. We have a rule on this podcast where we're not allowed to ask obvious questions, and I just stepped on the rule. What's my punishment, Bruce?
I don't know. We'll let Mary decide.
I'll ask her later.
Sorry.
Okay.
So let's talk about Crazy
I think Mary said, Mary actually just said there's no questions that you can't ask.
Oh, good. Well, we tried to
there is on the podcast, though.
Yeah, we
have
try
rules.
not to ask that where did the name come from, or, those obvious ones you probably get asked 100 billion times a year.
Gotcha. All good.
So anyway, let's talk Crazy Swedes. How did you guys end up with this incredible melding of genres? Was it on purpose, or did it just a happy accident of sorts?
No, actually, for the most part, pretty much totally on purpose. All the guys in the band, including myself, I kind of started the thing off. It's like build your own vehicle that, hey, you want to be in a band that's like X, then start that band. So I've got a big love of fusion and, shred stuff from 70s, 80s. And wanted to kind of revisit that, man. It's like I just wanted to get more into hey, being able to stretch out as a player and do your own thing. Compositionally as well as just from a playing perspective. And the three guys that are also in Swedes, they're all killer players. The drummer actually, George Snyder, is actually my brother. Oh. So that was easy peasy. That was actually, a lot of the influences when I was younger, probably, more or less kind of came from his likes, musically speaking. So that's how I first got exposed to some of this stuff. And the keyboard player, who I've been playing with for a number of years, he's pretty much a straight up jazz guy. He can play other things, but he, I think, keeps us maybe a little bit more, he'll try to keep us a little more honest insofar as the schooling aspect of it. And then, I butt heads with him sometimes with just the thing that it's like, hey, yeah, I know that's a rule, but if it sounds good, it is good. So there's some of that goes back and forth. And bass players are really solid bass players. Also classical pianist, which is kind of interesting juxtaposition, which we don't incorporate into this, right.
Little John Paul Jonesy.
Yeah, very much so, man. And then for me, it's like, coming off spending, a number of years as a, frontman and lead vocalist of Infinite Spectrum, prog metal group that I was with for a while there. We did a U.S. tour with Fates Warning a few years back. It was great to just kind of switch gears and not really think about things vocally and think about, oh, hey, I can get back to really just playing guitar. And that's been just, it's a really liberating group to play in, man, because while we have structure and we've written things where it's, you can tell we wear our influences on our sleeve. You definitely get the homages to different musical heroes that we had. There's also freedom within what we do that, the improvisation stuff is different from show to show. So
Right.
while you'll have like, hey, here's your head, here's your hooks, and here's your structure so that people can relate to it. And it was important to us to have memorable melodies and not just be playing for playing's sake. But there is that freedom to explore a little bit musically that you don't have in most other outfits. So it's a cool project, man. We've been doing it for 6 years and everybody's still into doing it. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I guess that's a testament right there.
I have a two-sided question for you. What is the best jam that you've ever had on stage, improvisational? And what was the biggest train wreck you've ever had on stage,
They
improvisationally?
may have been the same. Oh, that's a hard one. I mean, because it is interesting. I mean, I find like the most thrilling part of it, improvising is when you are it feels like you're about to just fall right off the train tracks, and then somehow the train goes right back on the track. So yeah, it's the tightrope moments are fun. I don't think I can pick out one specifically, but
Okay.
dude, there's definitely moments where you're just like, oh my god, I can't believe I just played that. That was amazing. And then there's also moments where you're like, oh my god, I can't believe I just played that. That was horrible. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah. I think one of the first bands that I ever saw kind of improvise on stage was the Black
Mm-hmm.
Crows. And I saw them on the Southern Harmony and Musical
Yep.
Companion
Oh
tour
wow.
when they were all like, I mean, high as a kite. That whole, like, it was crazy. Like I was like close to the stage and you could smell the weed coming off the stage. And I was in Canada at the time. It was illegal there. It's not anymore. But like it was just, I was just like, holy crap, these guys are high. But they were so good, and they did exactly what you said. Like they would jam, and suddenly they would just train wreck. And then the drummer was like, "Well, we got to get out of this.
Yep.
Here we go." Or someone would just like, "Okay, we're in no man's land. We got to get out of this." And it added this sense of confusion and euphoria at the same time to the
Interesting.
audience
Yeah.
that that I found very, very cool.
Yeah. Right on.
Do you guys?
So, like, do you find that when you're improvising on stage, do you find that you bring the audience through those kind of like confusion and euphoric moments
I,
when you're
yeah, I
jamming?
think that if you're a fan of this kind of music, you know what you're getting into. And while we do have one foot firmly placed in the past, so you've got like some of the older cats that are like, hey, I remember going to a Dixie Drag show, or I remember going to see Al Di Meola, or I remember whatever. And then you've got some of the younger guys where it's like maybe more into the more jam band scene or Snarky Puppy, things like that. So uh, what I found is you do kind of have these different generational things that kind of meld here that's a little unusual. And yeah, I think you do. I mean, we do. I think musically speaking, you're exploring things, and I think the audience goes on that journey with you if they're into this sort of thing. Um, but yeah, I think sometimes some people are not sure what they've gotten themselves into. You know,
Yeah,
for sure. But we try not to be excessive about it. So that's why it was important to have some sort of structure, or at least you can bring things back to your memorable melodies and hooks. And I think people respond to that.
cool. Bruce?
Yeah, when you guys are writing, being that everything is so different, are you guys writing in the traditional sense, like all in the old jam space, bouncing ideas off each other, or is it like a technology based thing? You're just sending an idea to the drummer or the guitarist to the bass player.
Um, it's probably a little bit more insulated, man. So it's like, yeah, it's like a lot of things like I would come up with a germ in the studio, and then I'd bring it into the guys, and I'd at least have some sort of form. But then the drummer's got like his own groove and his play on things, and the bass player and the key player are the same. Keyboard players also, we've worked together on this particular album, the keyboard player and I, a lot, both melodically and harmonically and structurally, just kind of building these things. So a lot of times he'd come up with some, hey, I got this cool progression, I think this might be something, and then I'd come up with like just a totally different melody over what it is that he had come up with
Right.
harmonically. So there's that kind of thing. So yeah, I guess a certain amount of things have been built in the studio. And then it's like you take it in with the rest of the band, and then it really kind of comes alive and becomes a little bit something different. But yeah, I think that the whole idea of like, oh, just sitting in a room and just jamming out until you find something, not so much. It's probably more like everybody's kind of on their own trip, and then we come in, and then everybody puts their own spin on it to make it theirs, you know. And it's like, I'm never going to write a drum part that's as good as what George would play, and or
Right.
what bass part is Eric or whatever, you know. So it's like everybody kind of has their own pride of authorship with like what they bring to the table. Um, but yeah, it's like, geez, I don't even know if I have the time to sit in a room and just jam out for hours to find something. So you know what I mean? It's I don't know. I guess we value the time that we have to do this thing. So it's not infinite.
Right.
So when we do get together, you're just trying to make the time you got together count.
And technology is amazing that
That's a
let us do
really
that.
Oh my God. It's like we wouldn't have been able to make this album without it, you know? Technology is great when it works, you know what I mean? But luckily, it worked enough to finish this, so
yeah. What are the personal dynamics like in the band? Because you said your brother is the drummer, right? And then you have all these other people around. Like when you're younger, that type of dynamic can sometimes be like explosive in a band, right? Because everyone's young and energetic and emotional, and there's all these chemicals rolling around in your body, hormones. What's it like as you get older to be in that situation? Is it a lot more calm, or do you still run into that kind of like little bit of friction here and there?
well, I think sometimes there's a little bit of friction. I think just because whatever people care, or sometimes somebody might get insecure about something that they're not as up on a piece that somebody else is. So I mean, you deal with that kind of thing. But no, it's like it's interesting. You talk about the brother dynamic, and it's like I remember when we were younger, like playing together as like teenagers. Like when I was a teen, and sure, you definitely get some of that going on because there's just that whole you're still growing and figuring your stuff out. But nowadays it's like we know each other, so it's sometimes we'll bust each other's chops. I mean, that's just a brother thing that you're gonna do, but it's definitely a lot more calmer, and you can just kind of discuss or talk through things and make it happen. So there's not as much butting heads that there was back in the day.
Yeah,
So
yeah. I just remember like being young in bands and like the fights that would break out, not necessarily physical
yeah,
fights, but screaming matches and drummers throwing drumsticks and leaving the room and whatever. So like when you're in a band with your brother, that's what I'm wondering. Like as you get older and you learn how to like be more, I guess, mature, you
yeah,
know,
no,
but
totally.
do those things change? Because, like you look at like the Gallagher brothers from Oasis, they could never be in a room together. They got to be what? They got to be older than us.
Yeah, no, I know that is crazy, but I guess that's just part of maturity, part of being secure with like what it is you do and who you are, and I think really the root of it. I mean, that's really what it's all about.
Yeah,
Um, so in this band, I feel like everybody that's doing it is doing it kind of for the same reasons. It's because like, hey, this is a cool thing. We don't really have an outlet to do this thing that we love to do. It's like you're playing in other groups, but you're playing at like maybe like I don't know 30-40% of your capabilities because you spent all this time trying to master an instrument, and you don't have that outlet. So I guess that's kind of how this thing came about. But we everybody's got the kind of respect for each other, both personally as well as musically. um,
cool.
so yeah, it's a cool group, man. This is the band I wanted to be in when I was 17.
Well, there you go.
And now you got it.
Exactly. Took long enough.
Are you taking this?
This is your midlife crisis.
Are you taking this on the road?
We will see. I mean, if we do anything with this, it's like right now we're doing a lot of promo work on the new record. We did a couple like a pre-release show recently. We've got another show probably coming up in October. We're just trying to set sights on next year and seeing if we can kind of pair that with maybe a like-minded instrumental group. But it'll probably be a short run. We're already working on material potentially for the next record.
Okay, cool.
You know, so we'll see where it goes. But yeah, it's not a one and done for us. So like I said, it took us this long to kind of do this project when we kind of got more like, oh, you know what, the shows are going well. This feels good. Let's write some more material. And it's like, hey, let's get it down. COVID derailed us,
Right.
obviously, but I know. Nobody wants to say it anymore, but it was one of those things where it's like we had done, drums, bass, and then basic guitar and keys, and then sat on it for a while because COVID happened, and then it was just like, hey, keyboard player and I decided, like, why don't we just start working on this stuff? So it ended up being a blessing in disguise, because I think if we had actually like done everything more as a live document, um, I don't think it would serve the songs as well.
Right.
And I think that we kind of got into, I wanted to produce things a little bit more than a live document, but not be too slick. But I think what you hear is kind of like it's a happy medium. It's in between, you know.
Yeah.
But I'm glad that we did it that way. It's like it's interesting. It's like one of the songs on the record that was my least favorite songs to play live, like became my favorite song on the record, because it's like I was able to work out like these horn arrangements, and I had a trumpet player friend come over and he laid down some solos for us, and it kind of created a whole new vibe and a new arrangement, you know. So happy accidents that you find like that.
Surprisingly, and this does surprise me, we hear this from a lot of musicians where they say COVID actually was a good thing for me because it gave me time to do what I wanted to do with the record.
Yep.
Instead of being forced to pound it out. Now, I don't think they think COVID was a good thing. I don't think they think it was good that it demolished the industry or economies or whatever. Sure. But emotionally and artistically, it was a good thing for them at that time. And it that surprises me to hear that, because we do hear it a lot from people.
Interesting. It makes sense though. It makes sense because it's just like you're cooped up at home, and you know there's only so many creative outlets that, you know, so it gives you that time to focus
and
on,
you can really hone your craft.
Yeah, totally, man. Which, you know, was, I guess that is kind of like the silver lining in the dark cloud, you know.
Yeah, in the illness of the word that shall never be spoken.
So I think, and I've said this before on the show, and Chris will vouch for me, but I think at the end of this, now that we're at the end of this whole nonsense, we're going to see like a cultural revolution, not just in music, but in art, in everything, because everybody has been locked away dealing with this shit, trying to get their emotions out and honing their craft. And now it's time to let it loose. And there's going to be an explosion of stuff.
Yeah, it'll be really interesting to see. I don't disagree with you, man. You know what I mean? Just because having that time to really focus on your craft that you never would have had before. You know what I mean? So it'll be.
I think artistically it's going to explode quickly, but from a technological point of view, I think it's going to be about a decade before we see the fruits of the technological evolution that happened because of this. Because how many kids were at home that suddenly had nothing to do?
Yeah.
And how many of those kids sat down at a computer and said, well, I'm going to learn to code because it's part of my class, and now I'm getting excited about it, and I can't go play with my friends, so what am I going to do?
Yeah.
You know, I'm going to do all this stuff. I think technologically it's going to be pretty crazy in the next decade.
We shall see.
Yeah.
Yep.
We shall see.
That runs me to the end of my questions. Chris, you got anything else?
I do not.
All righty. Well, thanks for having me, guys. Really appreciate it.
Hey, be well. Good chat.
Cheers.
All right,
you
bye.
too. Take care.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
All right, bye.